I just wanted to mention that I bought this airbrush with my own money. There's no sponsorship. Nobody asked me to review this. I bought it just so that I can review it for you guys. Hi guys, and welcome to my review of a typical 180 styled airbrush. This is a typical Chinese sort of copy, and we're dealing here with a brand Rong Peng. I couldn't really find anything on the internet, but they're all pretty much the same. And in fact, most of these parts are interchangeable with any other 180 style airbrush. So looking in the box, you get a little connector for a hose, which we probably won't use. We like to use a quick connect. There's a nozzle spanner, and there's some other use for that I'll show you just now. So let's have a look at the actual airbrush. It's in essence very nice, and there's a weird screw at the bottom there. I'll get to that a bit later. Got a Mac valve, and the action straight out of the box is actually pretty smooth. It's also got the trigger adjustment for the paint flow if you use that. I use that quite often actually, some people don't. Inside the paint cup, it's fairly standard, nothing spectacular, and what is to be expected from a Chinese airbrush. I found the lid to be a little loose, but if you just pop it in and give it a twist like that, then it locks up, and then it won't fall off, and it comes off easily enough. But like all my airbrushes that I review, I'm going to strip them down, grease them, and give them the best chance possible. So here we've got the airbrush stripped down. It's got your air cap, nozzle cap, your nozzle. I didn't take the nozzle out, it's your standard fitting. And we're going to get to the trigger guide that's loose at the moment. It's not fitted to the shaft like most are, but it does work. I do like the airbrushes that have their individual tension screws. And I think as a first airbrush, I think this should be about the bare minimum. Whether you get a 0.3 or a 0.2 needle, that all depends on you. But as far as quality is concerned, I think this should be your starting point. They are cheap enough, and they're basically a dime a dozen. So they're not anything spectacular, but they do work pretty well. So yeah, let's have a look at the parts. Here's the needle. It looks fairly nicely polished. I suppose you could polish it some more if you really need to, but I think that's pretty adequate. Nothing wrong with that. And this is the part I was talking about, which is the trigger guide, basically. Usually it's attached via that little hole there, but in this case the needle itself holds it. This screw at the bottom is the guide for the needle support, and there's a little screw just over here, and then it slots in there, and then it stabilizes the whole thing. So that's pretty nice. There's the cup once again. It's not anything special, but it's pretty standard. The finishing, the chrome finishing, is also very adequate. Here's the end cap, also nicely chromed, finishing up to scratch. This is the paint adjustment screw, and it's got a nice O-ring there for some tension. It's just got your standard nozzle, so this should be interchangeable with any other nozzle if you wanted to upgrade it to a 0.3 or a 0.18. 3 air holes. So this is this little guide I was talking about. You have to actually fit it in with a pair of tweezers, make sure it's the right way around, and then you slot the needle in, and then it holds it all together. But it works pretty much like any other setup. So all these parts are pretty interchangeable from any other 180 style airbrush that you might buy. And the tension screw also works very well. This is the paint screw for the paint adjustment, and when you turn it in, it decreases the amount that you can pull the trigger back, and that also works very nicely. The Mac valve is, I found the actual nut to be a little small, but it does work. I did test it, and it's very dosable from nothing to whatever you need. And there's the paint cap again, and it's just a bit loose, but you just find the spot where it fits in nicely, give it a small little twist, and then it won't fall off. But yeah, I think in general, you know, for a starter airbrush, this should be, I reckon, the bare minimum if you want to actually do anything. So here's this other useful tool that I wanted to show you. Behind this nut is a washer, and as you loosen or tighten it, it squashes that washer, and that'll put tension on the needle. But there mustn't be too much. You must have just enough just to feel some resistance, as I'm showing there. So if it's very stiff, just loosen it. If it's too loose, just give it a quick tighten with that tool. So yeah, let's head over to the other side and do some spraying. I'm just spraying some straight distilled water here, just to show you the pattern. And this could cover quite a lot of ground if you're doing a background. But I don't think that this is what this airbrush is meant for. Please excuse my very mediocre airbrushing. I'm still pretty new to this, but you can see you can basically paint pen lines, do shading, all sorts of stuff. It's really no issue with this. I find that the trigger was pretty reliable. It's just my lack of experience is making all these funny things. But here I'm trying some little dots, and these are quite small. I'm pretty zoomed in here. You can see some of these tiny, oh, there we go, we just made a mess up there. But anyway, I'm just using standard acrylic paints here, nothing special at all that I bought at the art store. So these are not inks or anything, it's just very standard acrylic paints that I've just watered down with some distilled water. And I think, as I said, as a beginner's airbrush, it'll do all the detail that you need. It can do all the shading that you need, and it feels very nice. It's very smooth. The trigger is very predictable. It feels nice in the hand. Here I'm just testing the Mac valve a little bit, and yeah, no, guys, I think it's a winner. I think for a first airbrush, this should be your consideration. Any cheap Chinese $30–$35 airbrush. And I managed to paint this with it. So it's not what you have, it's how you use it. And but thanks for watching, and we'll be doing some more airbrush reviews shortly. So stay tuned, and we'll see you soon. Thank you very much.